and welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. I am your host, Scott Daly, and I came across time for you.
And I'm Matt Freeman, and I came across time to kill you and to do this podcast.
Which are you going to do first, Matt?
Little of both.
This week on the show, our Deconstructing Director series continues with James Cameron's second film and his first bona fide hit. This week we're talking about 1984's The Terminator. Not Terminator, Matt. The Terminator. The Terminator.
And although sometimes I call it Terminator 1, which is even worse.
Yeah, that is pretty bad. That's like they tried to rebrand the PlayStation as the PlayStation 1. And you're just like, come on, folks. No.
Yeah.
No. And then Xbox just named their third console the Xbox One, which is weird as shit.
That is really confusing.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking all about James Cameron's Terminator and how this film teaches us about who he is as a director and as a human being, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I am having an existential crisis, and I wanted to talk to you about it, Matt, because this is the times they are changing in the world of Scott Daly and movie watching, and I need to vent this out in the only way I knew how, which is in front of a microphone to a few hundred people.
That's what this is for.
Indeed. And then we both have been watching a lot of TV lately, and we thought we could wrap up the show with just kind of a lightning round of TV shows that we've seen recently that we want to recommend.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
All right. So we are going to have so much to talk about with The Terminator this week, so let's get right into it and talk about James Cameron's The Terminator.
In the 21st century, a weapon will be invented like no other. This weapon will be powerful, versatile, and indestructible. It can't be reasoned with. It can't be bargained with. It will feel no pity, no remorse, no pain, no fear. It will have only one purpose: to return to the present and prevent the future. This weapon will be called the Terminator.
Matt, what is this movie all about?
A human soldier is sent from 2029 to 1984 to stop an almost indestructible cyborg killing machine sent from the same year, which has been programmed to execute a young woman whose unborn son is the key to humanity's future salvation.
That fucking sentence. The plot of Terminator is not complicated, but they managed to make it seem complicated.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it does highlight what a sort of weird concept is and how surprising it is that this became such a popular not just movie but franchise.
Sure.
But yes, that was a worst sentence I've ever had to say out loud.
I also did have a mini freak out when I read the year 2029, and I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
There's a scene in this movie when Kyle Reese is like talking about his military record, and he's like, I served under General Perry from 2021 to 2027.
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck, that's now. That's right now.
You know what kills me is that I forgot that the movie, I forgot they came from 2029, and my like median date for when I think AGI is probably going to come about has been 2029 for like 10 years. And
that's terrifying.
I've never really particularly had any need to move it one way or the other. So it's just kind of sat there, this stationary number, which has gotten closer with every year. And then as soon as the movie, does the flashback and it's like 2029, I was like, oh, fuck.
Oh, God. I was going to say they should do a re-release of this movie in 2029, but maybe we'll be, in desolated wastelands, absolutely covered in human skeletons.
Yeah. Just
why are those human skeletons there? Did they nobody swept up afterwards?
I think they just all died in a big flash of nuclear fire and just fell where they were.
And no one's picking them up. No one's saying, "Hey, we gotta sleep here.
No,
maybe let's get rid of the skulls."
No.
This movie was written by James Cameron, Gail Ann Hurd, who is Cameron's ex-wife and super producer. Gail Ann Hurd has produced so many huge movies in the 80s and 90s. And also William Wisher, who has a credit for additional dialogue. Not sure exactly what that means, but he wrote some of the script, I guess. The movie was, of course, directed by James Cameron and stars Linda Hamilton, Michael Biehn, and, of course, the Arnold Schwarzenegger. All three of these actors will appear in later Cameron films.
That's right.
There's a lot of actors in this movie that will appear in later ones, and not just T2.
Yeah. He really likes these folks. Wait, what was the shit? The
What?
guy, the cop. What's the cop that he was in the last movie too? Oh my god, can't believe this.
Oh, Lance Henriksen?
Yeah, Lance Henriksen's also in a disproportionate number of his movies, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. He won't be in T2 though, because he gets blown away.
Yep.
Matt, where do we begin with this movie? Our first in our Cameron series of movies that I think both you and I just collectively love. I think the interesting thing about Terminator is, when it comes to like the debate around Alien and Aliens, I think there is, people on both sides that say, Alien's the better movie. Aliens is the better movie. And I, depending on the day, will flip-flop back and forth between the two of those. I think when it comes to Terminator, the consensus is generally that T2 is just the better movie, which puts the original Terminator in kind of a weird place because it's a very good movie. It's a very, very good movie, but it's a movie in which its sequel basically did everything this movie is doing, but more and better.
Yeah, I don't know how to start except to be a bit autobiographical and just agree that I've probably seen this movie 3 times, maybe ever. Seen T2 like 50 times. It's like it was one of my childhood foundational movies. And the consequence of that is that I forgot how much this movie whips ass. Because this movie is actually great, and it's one of those perfect movies actually where I don't think I'd change a thing about it. It just has the misfortune of being followed by T2.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Alien and Aliens, I think those were 2 movies that were so different from each other. They were different kinds of movies that like a debate about which is better becomes really interesting because like it just depends on what type of movie you watch. T2 is really just this movie again, but like with better technology. Cameron has better skill. He's a more confident director. He knows what he's a more confident writer too, I'd say. But yeah, like I don't want that to take away from this movie, which I agree with you is just an excellent, excellent film. And I do think there are ways in which these movies are different in really distinct ways that I want to get into because this movie feels to me like a very 1980s movie in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yes, it does. But also, I think this is one of the things that makes James Cameron worth doing a Deconstructing Directors series on is that he is with this movie pushing things forward in a way that everyone's going to copy and is in fact going to define what we then think of as the 90s movies.
Sure.
Like you see the things that become the common 90s movie things in this movie. Like this was a really groundbreaking movie. I think it's easy to forget that because, we were little kids when this came out.
I also think like things like, you think about Predator, a movie that kind of takes the big giant muscled 80s action hero and kind of turns that on its head. I think this movie is doing that before Predator's doing it though, because the thing about this movie is the big muscly 80s action hero is the bad guy.
Right.
Like he's the bad one. And the hero is the skinny guy wearing crusty homeless man pants the whole movie, who is like down on his luck and like panicking and like sneaking around and hiding. Like I think the part of the movie that affected me the most on this rewatch, I think, is those opening like 15 minutes where Cameron basically just allows us to see the arrival of the Terminator and the arrival of Kyle Reese into the past. And the scenes, they're not identical, but they play out very similar, right? They arrive naked, they run into people, and they take clothes from those people, and then they go about their business. And the ways in which those are different, I think, is how Cameron characterizes those two characters. And before we know that the Arnold is a machine, before we know that Kyle is a soldier from the future sent back to defeat the machine, we know who these people are just by how they act. That like the Arnold walks up to these group of punks and just kills them and takes their clothes, whereas Kyle like grabs some pants from the homeless man and then sprints away from cops and like sneaks into a store and grabs stuff and, you know, trying everything he can do to not commit violence when he doesn't have to. It's such a great way of characterizing them with basically no lines of dialogue spoken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Agree completely. The beginning, I guess that's the problem, is that every part of the movie is perfectly paced, but the beginning is particularly perfectly paced because it's doing such a hard job is why it's noteworthy. I think it's introducing this weird situation where you've got these two guys who appeared in flashes of light and you don't know where they're from and what they are, and they're both weirdos. And then also intercut with this is something that by all rights should be the most boring thing in the world, which is introducing the character of Sarah Connor, who is like explicitly a boring normal person. And so like the fact that Cameron is able to make those scenes as interesting as they are, like is incredibly noteworthy, because you're ready to just be like, you know, you cut to Sarah Connor, you're ready to be like, oh, the boring protagonist, but no, it's like super fast paced, it's dense, it's funny. That's one thing about this movie that I forgot, is this movie is funny. Like there's a lot of humor in this movie. I don't even remember some of these jokes, actually. Like I think my favorite one from this viewing that I just forgotten was when the police chief and Lance Henriksen are sort of doing their like gruff banter thing, and the police chief is like on the phone and like juggling coffee in the phone and like distracted, and he's holding a cigarette that he's clearly been smoking, and he tells Lance Henriksen to give him a cigarette, and then he takes the cigarette, and then he like sees that he has a lit cigarette in his other hand, and he like looks at Lance Henriksen, and Lance Henriksen didn't even notice because he's also equally busy. It's a great little totally nonverbal comedy beat. There's a bunch of stuff like that where it's just left there for you to get or you know, take or leave. It's not the movie doesn't stop to, you know, let you laugh or whatever. I don't know. Like it's very funny. It's very dense with stuff. And I think that really amplifies how fun it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that is core to who James Cameron is as a person. And I'm mentally jumping ahead to movies that we're going to get to later. But, you know, just looking at the two movies we've covered, we mentioned this on Piranha 2, a movie we didn't particularly like. But it's here again, this idea that James Cameron is going to take the time in every one of his scripts to really flesh out who the people in the movie are. We need to know who Sarah Connor is as a person before we understand what's going to happen with her. And I think the way he does it is so economical. Like, I think like it's not that many scenes with Sarah. Like, and we get who she is, and a lot of it is subtext. Like this is something I focused on this time a lot. Like, who is Sarah Connor as a person, right? Like, who is she before all this happens? What do we know about her? Well, we know she lives with a roommate, and her roommate has a serious boyfriend that comes over a lot. She was going to go out with a guy, but he stood her up. We know she owns a lizard. We know she drives a Vespa. We know she's a waitress, but she's like a terrible waitress, right? And these are all little character beats that are kind of away from the norm in some ways. Like it's kind of showing that she doesn't quite fit in the life she has. She's third wheel to her roommate. She has an atypical pet in her house. She is not like good in her job. Like she's just not like she's the worst waitress ever. In the brief scene we get of her as a waitress, she's just terrible. She's so awful. And so, yeah, I mean, it's like, it's this great thing Cameron is doing here that it's almost as if she's just waiting for this to happen. She's just waiting for her life to be revealed to herself. And I think that's a really interesting thing. And it kind of allows you to buy into the change of Sarah Connor and Sarah Connor kind of embracing what is happening to her and becoming the woman she is by the end of the movie.
Yeah, right. She's kind of a weirdo, and she doesn't belong in this time or in this world, and that's, to me, by far the most emotional part of the movie. Like the part that kind of gets me choked up, and maybe it's because I know about T2. Honestly, I don't know, but it's the part toward the end where Kyle Reese has been horribly injured, and part of you like even having watched this movie a few times, part of you is like expecting her to kind of like freak out and melt down, or like oh no, Kyle Reese he's gonna have to get a second wind or something so he can like take care of her.
Mm-hmm.
And then she totally turns soldier mode, and she's like, she yells at him,
Yeah, get up, soldier.
get up, soldier. Yeah, it's so good. It's so and then from that point on, I mean, she's terrified and desperate, but it's she. I think another thing I might have noticed on this viewing that I didn't notice before is I think that like she actually traps the Terminator on purpose in the press.
Yeah, she does.
Because I didn't get that before. What we see her like pause for a moment and like look around and realize where she is, and then look in a direction and then go. And she crawls through the press on purpose, knowing that she's going to trap the Terminator in the press. And I didn't realize that was like, oh, she got him. She checkmated him. That's much cooler than like, oh, she's just running scared and then ends up lucking out into the situation.
Yeah, it's really great. I mean, I think it shows Cameron's genius to understand that you need to get Kyle Reese out of there in the final act of the film. You need to remove him from the equation, and you need it to be Sarah Connor being the final defeat of the Terminator comes from Sarah herself, not from Kyle. And I'm very sad to see Kyle Reese die. Like, that always really affects me when she rolls him over and he's just dead. He's just gone.
Yeah.
But it's such a smart, a clever, and true to the movie idea to just say, okay, he's gone now, Sarah. You have to do what you have to do. And she rises to the occasion because that's just who she is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the movie, like, this is what I mean by this being a 90s or an 80s movie, rather, is that the end of the movie is kind of very melancholic. Like, they won, they stopped the Terminator and she's alive, but the end of the world is a few years away. And she's riding into the storm, alive, but knowing that the desolation of humanity is coming. This strikes me as a very 80s thing. Like, in the 80s, we looked a lot at like the kind of the inevitability of our own destruction. And that is something that, like, that's the big difference between Terminator and T2, right? Is T2 is a 90s movie, which says, nah, fuck that. We got this. We're going to find a way past this. Where Terminator says the best we can hope for is that we'll make it through. But we can't stop the inevitable. And that's really distinct to this movie.
Yeah. Right. I think just clearly goes without saying, it echoes the Cold War and the idea that in the 80s, everybody thought this is where things are heading. Things are getting worse and worse. The doomsday is right around the corner. And then the 90s is basically America being like, yeah, we won. and we get we can fix all the problems.
Yeah. We prevented Judgment Day. We did it with our guile and our cleverness. We can stop Judgment Day.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's great. And she's like one of the best characters ever written. I love Sarah Connor. And like, yes, the T2 version of Sarah Connor is always such a fun, not inversion of the character, but like escalation of who this woman is. But I don't know. I think I like this version of Sarah Connor better. I think I like getting to see her from beginning to end here in this movie. Like the woman who is in that picture, who we see, in the Jeep at the end of the movie, compared to the woman that we meet at the very beginning of the movie, is just like, she's so different, but also that core of her, you can still kind of see it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because, T2 Sarah Connor is embittered and essentially an unlikable character, actually. Like, her
arc is to become human again, basically.
Her arc is to return to being human. Yeah. Because it's almost like she returns to being the hopeful person that she was at the end of T1. Not the person at the beginning of T1 because she was naive, but the actualized person who has hope that she can do something meaningful.
Yeah.
I mean, so I guess everybody's performance is great. That's one of the great things about the movie, but she is remarkable. I think there's a sort of just everything. I mean, like, I rewatched a few individual scenes in particular just a minute ago, and like just the scene where she's sitting in the nightclub waiting for the cops to show up, which instead the Terminator finds her, and Kyle Reese finds her. She's just got this expression of like fear and pensiveness and worry, that it's just like the perfect note, the perfect level of intensity. I guess I'm saying this in reaction to the fact that so many horror movies have like just this sort of fixed expression on the faces of the characters who are supposed to be afraid of the monster.
Sure.
That just becomes inhuman to me. But like, she's always dynamically in the scene. Like, I mean, she's a real actor. she's so good.
Yeah. God bless Linda Hamilton. So good. I think I like that scene. I think the scene in what is the name of the club? It's tech noir.
Yeah,
because
tech noir. Yeah,
that's what Cameron said. The type of the genre of film he was creating is tech noir. I love that entire scene, and I think she's the key to it all. Like, there's this really masterful stroke with, like, she looks and sees in the mirror of the bar Kyle Reese is there and knows that he was the one following her, and so it's this really great internal subversion where she sees him and is about to panic, and while that's happening, Arnold comes over and just whips out the gun on her, and the look on her face when he brings out that gun and puts the laser sight on the middle of her head, it's not that it's not fear, but you're right, it's not like the horror final girl, like, I'm gonna scream and fall over and panic thing. It's almost this resigned fear,
right,
of like, oh,
yeah,
okay,
yeah, it this is what I was afraid of, and this is happening now, and she's frozen, right? I mean, she doesn't scream, she doesn't run, she kind of knows there's no hope for her. I mean, she's obviously perfect. I think that James Cameron deserves some level of credit for the way a scene like that plays out too, because like you just pointed out, the idea of, she sees that Michael Biehn is watching her, and like the cuts back and forth between the two of them as you understand that she has seen him and he has seen her seeing him, and it's this like, oh, what's going to happen now? Is she going to try to run?
Yeah, and the scene is playing out in slow motion, so like we don't even actually get to see the resolution of that, like where he knows that she knows, and they're both kind of trying to see who is going to make the first move. And like, while that's going down is when Arnold is slowly walking up from the side, from the spot where she didn't even know he was there.
Yeah.
That's a Jurassic Park road.
Yeah. Not from the front. So I don't know. I can't withhold it any longer. Can we talk about Arnold and the Terminator? His character?
Sure. Let's talk about Arnold.
Yeah. I think yet another thing that I appreciated this time more than I have in the past is the degree to which the Terminator is not just a boring robot. Like, he's like creepy and like desperate. He has this like desperate hunger to him. The scene I'm thinking about in particular is when they're running away from the nightclub and he's chasing them in the cop car, and Arnold's just doing this terrifying expression of just like hunger, just like his eyes are like open like way too wide, and it's like genuinely a unsettling, and he's like jerking around, like his movements are like jerky, because he's like, this is his one mission in life, is to kill this woman, and he kind of thought it was going to be easy. Like, you got the feeling from the beginning of the movie that he was being very methodical and felt like it was going to be easy. And then he realizes like, oh shit, like there's a defender here. She might get away. And then he's becoming like animalistic. And at that point, he's gone from like basically perfectly coiffed Mr. Universe Arnold Schwarzenegger. He looks absolutely, like a beautiful human specimen when he first appears.
When he first teleports in, you're just like, first of all, he looks so young.
Yeah.
He looks so young, but he just looks perfect. He just looks absolutely perfect.
And then his hair and his eyebrows are burned off, and he just looks like a crazy monster. And he's wearing that ugly coat that he got from the punks, and he looks so awful, and it's just perfect, right? I don't know. I just love everything about it. Yeah,
but I mean, isn't it interesting? Like, I think he does look awful, but like, he looks like what the stereotypical cool guy in the 80s would look like, right? He's rocking the sunglasses and the motorcycle, and like he looks like cool guy,
Mhm.
whereas Kyle Reese looks like junkie guy. Like,
Yeah.
I just think that's a really fascinating choice.
Sure. Well, so I guess, yes, he starts out looking really cool, and then he gets more and more torn up
Yeah.
and kind of gross and inhuman, and pulls out his eyeball and all that.
But I agree with you. It is selling Arnold's performance so short to just say he's pretending to be a robot.
Mhm.
Like, yes, he is very stoic. He has like 14 lines in the whole movie, but he is doing things. You're absolutely right. He's acting with his eyes. I don't actually know like how much emotion and desire these robots have. I mean, I think we're kind of using T2 to say that they do on some level, right? But we don't know that in the concept of this movie. But you can feel the hunger, you can feel the desire, you can feel the desperation. You can feel like there's moments where like he's about to get Sarah, and then Michael Biehn shows up and shoots him, and he kind of swings around, and there's a look of surprise on his face. It's not like over exaggerated, but it's just in the eyes. Really, you can see this surprise and scramble in him. It's so much better than it would be if it was just, okay, just be a machine. Just be a machine. I don't want to see a bit of emotion on your face. I don't want to see any of that. And yeah, I mean, I think we have to give Arnold Schwarzenegger all the credit in the world for being just like one of the best action actors of all time, who just understands how to have that kind of presence. But we also have to give the credit to Jim Cameron, who looks at these performances and sees these things and sees kind of the humanity seeping out of Arnold and saying, yeah, that's perfect. That's just enough. That's just enough to say that, like, under the layer of skin, there's a layer of metal, but under that layer of metal, maybe there's some sort of, I don't want to say soul, but like, human qualities to him.
I unambiguously think that the Terminator is a feeling creature. He probably just feels like anger and frustration, though. And that's, yes, we know from T2 that the T800 comes to have a lot of emotions, and T1000 is very emotional and experiences a lot of like frustration and just all sorts of emotions
and glee at fucking killing people.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, he like unnecessarily violently killing people. In fact, this Terminator is a lot more kind of efficient. But like, I mean, I love the the scene where he's like sitting on the bed. I forget if he's like cleaning a wound or if he's like loading a gun or something, and the guy comes to the door, and like he smells horrible because his like wounds are rotting, and he's like hunched over, and he's just like, he's clearly like angry and sulking because he's been badly injured and his prey has gotten away. And the guy's like, you got a dead cat in there, and he's like, fuck you, asshole. And it's just it's like it is a robotic response, but also he's angry, and I think that's important. I think that's part of what makes the movie so fun, actually.
I agree. I totally agree. He's such a great character, and like I love the T2 version of Michael. I don't know, Arnold. I was thinking of Michael Biehn.
Right.
Arnold. I love that version. That version makes me cry every time I watch that movie. But this guy is amazing. He's really amazing. I love him.
And I'd forgotten how amazing, because it like you said, it's easy to round him off to just like, oh yeah, he's a robot.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's to the point where like I like the ending of the movie. I like the ending of the movie for what it gives Sarah Connor. But I do think the second we burn away the Arnold and are only left with the like admittedly badass looking exoskeleton that is the Terminator, I just feel like the movie loses a little bit of something there. Like I just feel like we lose the Arnold of it all, and that hurts the movie.
Yeah, I agree. I felt exactly the same way. I think one thing that I reminded myself of while watching that was you actually had no idea what the endoskeleton looked like until that point, because in this movie, there are no skeletal Terminators walking around in the future, at least that we see. So that's like a horrifying surprise to realize, like, he doesn't even need the flesh. He's still going to come and try to kill you. And then, I do think some of the desperation comes across when he's blown in half and he's just like an animal, like clawing his way after her.
Sure.
But I agree, like losing the fact, losing the face actually did matter. but it's still pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, and I do think it's easy to undersell how badass of a design that is because we've seen it hundreds and hundreds of times now. But that's such a badass looking design. It's so terrifying. It's so good. I actually read that's what Jim Cameron started with. So the idea for this movie actually came while he was down in the Bahamas for Piranha 2. This is after he had been fired, but he apparently, because he's James Cameron, just like stuck around in hopes that they might let him help with the edit. So he just kind of was hanging out in the Bahamas, not doing anything, like hoping that they would let him help with the edit of the movie, which they did not do. And he had a dream about like a metal skeleton dragging its way along his floor holding kitchen knives. And like he woke up, wrote that down, and that basically became the Terminator. And he wrote the rest of the movie backwards from that because he's like, all right, how are we going to do this? Well, it has to be the future because these things don't exist yet. And it's like, well, no, it can't be the future because I don't have enough money for that. So it's like, okay, well, what if we bring the future to the present? That'll be easier. And that's how it all rolled out from there.
So cool. That's such a cool story.
Yeah.
The thing I love about this design in particular is that the teeth are like enamel, which makes sense because those are the teeth that he would be showing as a flesh and blood covered guy. So it's this steel skeleton with glowing red eyes, and then he just has these kind of gross real teeth. That's just such a great touch. That's such a great piece of attention to detail.
Yeah, I've never put words to that, but you're totally right. It's one of those things that I think your brain notices because it's just weird and creepy. But yeah, of course it's the real human looking teeth. Yeah.
Just every detail, like so many action movies, you watch them a bunch of times and you notice the little tiny mistakes. It's just like, and I'm not saying there's no mistakes in this movie because, I mean, let's be realistic, but like the level of precision in, all of the hectic gunfights and car chases, and it's just all so meticulous. And that is one of the things about James Cameron that makes him good at all, all forms of directing, but in particular action directing, because I really do think that when you're really tight and precise with your action scenes, you get so much more audience buy-in than if you're like lazy and chaotic. Like I think there's a lot of reasons to love James Cameron, but I think a big reason is actually like the precision and care in the action scenes. Like the action scenes matter to him. He really cares that he has done the action scene as well as he can.
Yeah, and to your point, like the attention to detail, and I mean, the action scenes in the movie are basically just a bunch of chase scenes. Like they're just consecutive chase scenes. And again, the disadvantage that the Terminator has is that the chase scenes in T2 are they're just better. They're just better. Sorry, Terminator. I love this movie, but the T2 ones are just better. They're better chase scenes. But these are so good. And to your point about the attention to detail, like one of the things we were talking about before we started recording is like just this little tiny things. Like Kyle Reese is throwing these handmade plastic explosive grenades at the Terminator, and he's thrown like 3 in a row, and they've blown up behind where the Terminator is. So it's like they're going off too late. And so the next one you see him throw, he lights it, he sticks his head out the window of the car, and then he holds and looks at it and lets the fuse burn down a little bit more, and then throws that one, and it blows up like right in front of the Terminator. And it's just like this little thing that the movie doesn't even really like scream out at you. I feel like in action scenes sometimes you want everyone to like, you're either nervous about or you just need the comfort of pointing out every little action beat that you have and like shining a spotlight on it because you're like, look, we did this thing. Do you see this thing we did? We did this thing, and it cost us money to do the thing, so we want you to see that. And this movie didn't do that. Cameron just sticks the camera out there and he has the actors go through the motions and really without any dialogue. And then it just plays out, and
Mhm.
you can notice it. You can notice that he was like waiting for the fuse to burn a little bit, or you can't, and he doesn't really care because it is there. It's
I mean, the consequence of that, like, it's not the dramatic consequence of that is that you're worried. You're like, oh shit, okay, he's waiting longer,
Mhm.
increasing the odds that he's just gonna get blown up accidentally. So you're worried
Yeah.
about this, and then basically that's what happens, because on the next one after that, he's holding it again, probably holding it too long. And then the Terminator, like, either shoot. I don't remember if
He
he
shoots
gets
him.
hit. Yeah, he
shoots
shoots him, and then he fumbles it, and it falls like right outside the car window, and
Yeah.
it blows up. And we don't even necessarily see if it injures him, but we kind of assume it does.
Yeah.
Because of how screwed up he is after that point.
Yeah, I mean, this is the cat and mouse game that's being played in this scene. That is like, there is a little mini like strategy session happening in the middle of this chase scene where, yeah, like it's this little mini cause and effect chain where, oh, the things are blowing up too early. I'll hold the fuse. The Terminator says, oh, you're holding the fuse a little bit longer. Okay, that means the next time you do that, I have the opportunity. I have the ability to shoot you, and he executes on it. And I just feel like a different director would have said, okay, in order to make this clear, absolutely clear, I'm going to do this, this medium close up on Arnold, like reacting to it, so we can see that Arnold sees it, and we can do, like, it's all this stuff that I think overcomplicates and over busies the scene, and it's just not necessary. And Cameron understands that it's not necessary.
So I don't normally watch director interviews when we do these things, mostly because I kind of want to have just the purity of the experience and not have a bunch of like the director's words in my head when I'm watching this thing. But this time I've watched these movies so many times already that I think it's fine. Like,
there's no such thing as a purity of experience when you've seen the movie a dozen times.
And when it like is, I could just watch it with my eyes closed. Yeah. So I watched some interviews, and one thing Cameron said that really struck me as being like, yes, I definitely see that, is he said that he thinks a lot of action directors cut too fast. And he said action directors in general, they memorize their cuts. And what that means is, you know what's going to happen next. And so, like, you already know the context of the thing you're looking at. Your eyes are already looking at the relevant piece of the screen. You already understand it. You're not processing it because you're the director. You know exactly what is on the screen. And so you cut prematurely. And then when you cut, you know where your eyes are supposed to go next because you've memorized your cuts. And so, like, you as the director or as the editor cutting the film cut way too fast and too abruptly because, well, you know what you're looking at and you don't want to be boring. And his rule of thumb is like, people take like probably twice as long. He didn't actually say this, but my opinion based on what I see in his movies is like, he's giving you like twice as long to actually process what you're seeing. And the result doesn't ever feel like, oh, Cameron like cuts his movies slowly. It's like, no, it doesn't feel slow. It just feels like the right amount of time to process what you're looking at. And it's the patience with the cutting, I think, that allows us to make observations like, oh, he's waiting just a little bit longer for the fuse to burn, instead of like cut. And then you're supposed to like put that together from all those cuts.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. Yeah, I love that. I did see the cutting, at least in the opening kind of chase sequence where Kyle Reese is running away from the police and runs into that store. And what Cameron does in that scene is he puts a lot of things in front of the camera. So like Kyle Reese is running through the store and the camera is one row behind him. And so as he's moving through the row, the camera is gliding along on a dolly as well. And all we're doing is getting to see little bits and pieces of him, little flashes of him through either aisles or through, shelves that aren't fully stocked. So we like see little bits and pieces. And I thought that was really interesting. And I think a different director would have cut a bunch of different times and moved the camera a bunch of times, so we always have a clear view of Kyle. But I think that helps the tension and helps like the feeling that he's hiding, because not only is he hiding from the police, but he's temporarily like hiding from us. It makes him feel weaker because he's like scurrying about. And I think that's really important, is in the early parts of these movies, to like make this guy feel incompetent and like, and so you get this feeling of, how the fuck are we going to win? How the fuck are we going to win? We don't stand a chance against this thing.
Yeah, I forgot the part in this movie where the Terminator kills her mom and steals her mom's voice.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
totally forgot that was even just like another note of making the Terminator seem like ultra competent and Kyle seeming definitely inferior.
I like that happens, and I like that like Sarah makes a mistake
Mhm.
there. I also appreciate that the movie doesn't like stop everything to have like Kyle chastise her for the mistake.
Mhm.
You know, like there's not a moment of like, how did he find us? He couldn't have possibly found us. Did you tell anyone where we are? And she has to go, yeah, I told my mom. And then
Mhm.
he's like, well, your mom's dead. Like there's not I just think that would be another unnecessary step in the movements of the movie. We didn't need that.
Yeah.
Like we saw that she made a mistake. It was an honest mistake that she didn't fully understand what the Terminator was capable of, and that's it. We don't need to see the characters, you know, dramatizing the conflict that mistake creates.
Yeah, that would have felt dramatically inappropriate given.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think this is an important thing because like that, if that had happened as you just described it, which is totally a thing that would happen in some other movie, it would have ruined the poignancy of Kyle Reese's death in like 5 minutes from that point.
Yeah.
Because like you need them to be these like lovers across time.
Mhm.
And it is sad that she made that mistake, but to inject an artificial conflict between the two of them at that point would have felt really off and would have just like there's something to be said for just knowing what emotion you want and just staying with that, even when you could throw in some other kind of, we could have, we could do this, we could do that. Yeah, you could, but actually just do nothing, just stay where you are emotionally and let the viewer sit with that. And that's because that's what you actually wanted to convey.
Yeah. I totally agree. I love that. And I think that's a great transition to what we have to talk about here is that sex scene. Because that is the most 1980s thing about this movie, right? It's not enough that we see Kyle and Sarah hook up. We have to see Kyle and Sarah hook up. We get full boobies. We get not just we get to see her topless, but like we get to see Sarah Connor on top of Kyle Reese, like grinding on him. It is like an extended 45-second scene of like where they're getting it. You're getting it done. We see it from beginning to end, and I just think that's like hilariously 80s in a way that you just like if you remade this movie now, that would just not happen anymore.
I think the word here is like eroticism.
Yeah.
Which is not like that's what's funny is like I feel like I've seen movies with sexual content in recent years, but they somehow it's always clinical feeling in a way where like the 80s in this movie in particular, it's like it's meant to be erotic. It's meant to hit that particular emotional point, you know?
Yeah, and I do think I can't believe I'm about to talk about this, but I do think it's doing something for the characters because Sarah Connor's on fucking top, man.
Yeah.
She's in control of the situation, and that fits the transformation that she is making as a character and the Sarah Connor that she's becoming. And so we kind of see her take control of the situation, just like she's going to take control of the rest of the situation.
Yeah. And she's the one who comes on to him too. You know, he's this, like, that's what, I mean, I think you're right. Like, cause he is this strong military, resourceful man, but then he kind of falls apart when he tells her, like, I came across time for you. I love you, which is very, it's not a thing you would expect him to say. And then he feels super awkward for having said it.
Yeah. He's about to leave. Like he said it and then is like, I shouldn't have said that, and starts packing up his bag and is about to get out.
Yeah. And like, that's him basically showing a side of weakness that we haven't seen from him. Understandable, but still weakness. And then she just kind of, takes over, like you said.
Yeah. And she's the one that instigates the entire conversation too, because she just kind of walks up to him and says, what are the girls like in the future?
Yeah.
And like he won't get to the point, right? Like where she
Yeah.
has to ask the question like 6 different times.
Right.
That's not what I mean. Do you have someone special?
Right.
Like it's incredibly awkward. And again, this is it feels like a subversion of the 80s action hero trope in that this is our traditional action hero guy. And in this regard, he's completely kind of like overpowered by this woman, and she is in control of the entire situation here.
Yeah, he doesn't know what to do, and that's, you know, it's realistic, right? He's like this traumatized victim of this Holocaust. I do feel like a lesser movie takes this character and has him, you know, turn into the seductor and just, you know, be awesome. And it's like, no, he's really good at fighting Terminators. He's not good at anything else.
Yeah.
And that's good character work, actually.
I totally agree. Like the best thing he is at making plastic explosive. That's when he looks the coolest, is when he's making plastic explosive. But everything to do with human interaction, he's just not very good. And that makes sense because the interactions he has with people in his world are completely different. Like the one scene we get of him in the future when like the kid jumps out the corner and like pretends to shoot him with her gun, and then he lifts his actual gun and like mimes shooting her. I don't know. It's harmless, but this time I was also like, ew, Kyle. Well, I hope the safety's on.
Yeah, well, I agree. I mean, that's funny because it's like this is the world they live in, where like you'll just casually point a gun at a child because it's funny because like your life is absolute shit. Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, speaking of that flashback, or rather speaking of the fade into that flashback, I think one of my favorite just kind of directorly touches of the movie is when he falls asleep in the next to the construction site where all the giant machines are you know, digging or whatever, and it seamlessly transitions from that to, you know, treads, and then it pans down and the treads are rolling over skulls, and then you realize he's, you know, now we're in the dream, and it's just such a great transition.
It's wonderful. I mean, that's like the type of flourish that some people roll their eyes at, that I'm like, fuck yeah, give me more of that. Yeah. I think the cool thing is that is the place where Cameron does it the most directly, is tie machines in the present to the future. But like he's also doing it constantly throughout the movie. Like the movie starts in the future, right? And we see these giant big machines, and then we do our opening credits, and we cut back from the opening credits where the first thing we see is a garbage truck, a big garbage truck. And the way the angles are on it, it makes it difficult to see it's a garbage truck until we see it lift the big garbage dumpster. Yeah. And so like, it's almost as if he's like playing with you a little bit there, is like, are we still in the future? Where are we?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think part of that is also their set decoration for 1984 LA, which is just the dirtiest fucking place in the entire world. Like I know it's just for like the effect of the time transformation that like it kicks up newspaper, but there's just like newspaper everywhere.
Yeah, it's this disgusting. And the other thing that I mean, so basically the movie takes place over a very short span of time.
Yeah.
And thus it is nighttime like the entire time they're in LA, essentially. I mean, with a small exception of like the Terminator waking up, or I guess he doesn't sleep, but the Terminator still being in LA the next morning. But yeah, it's nighttime, dark, grimy, dirty. We spend time in the police station. Everything sucks. The police are having to deal with violence all the time. There's a little bit of social commentary in the news broadcasts, because it's not it's never just like okay, so there's two things happening. Number one is like the sort of disgusting, prurient way in which they're like, oh, here's a good story. Two Sarah Connors have been murdered. Isn't that fascinating, everyone? Isn't that fun? Don't you love that? Isn't that a great story? And then also just like throwing in other stuff that seems to be about like just the degradation of the world, and like a giant dockyard fire has burned down half of Boston or something like that. Just like thrown at the end of some broadcast is something about a horrible fire, and it's all like that. It's all this just very subtle in the background, but it's there.
Well, and our two police officer characters, Traxler and Vukovic, the second, who is played by Lance Henriksen, there's a lot of great comedy scenes between them, like you already talked about, but also like when they first get the case file, when Lance Henriksen comes to his boss with the case files and shows that two women named Sarah Connor were killed, their reaction to that is just like annoyance. It's just like, oh, I hate the crazy ones. It's like, these are two women that are dead, and they're just like, this is going to make my job way more complicated. And it is really fascinating the way in which these two characters are they're just beaten down. Like, you talked about the cigarette thing, but I also love that coffee's 3 hours old. And I put a cigarette in it, and then he takes another sip of it. It's just like this, that these men are just exhausted, that the world is just falling apart already. And like, Cameron spends time with us on the streets and in the alleyways. There's so many homeless people we see over the course of this film. Our characters are like constantly walking by the homeless, or walking by people suffering, or walking by three punk guys that are like, I don't know, spending their evening in like looking at the stars, or like, I don't like they're I thought the Bill Paxton's like whole thing, they're at Griffith Observatory, right? And they're just using one of those like coin operated telescope things, and they're just arguing about whose turn it gets to be next, which is just like, they just look like ruffians, and yet they're just like, I want to see the LA skyline at night. No, it's my turn. I don't know. That was really funny, but yeah, I think there's a lot of social commentary going on here. Around this whole thing.
There was I can't take credit for this. I don't think I can remember who the YouTuber was, but somebody pointed out that if you really look at the outfits of those three punks, even there's a lot of detail. Like, one of them has what looks like a tire tread done in paint or makeup or something like down his face.
Yeah, that's Bill Paxton.
That's Bill Paxton.
That's what he has. Yeah.
And there's a few other details like this that all kind of cohere to give this impression of like mechanized things having crushed these men, basically. Like like a tire tread going over your face is like, yeah, you've been run over by a machine.
Yeah. That's so good. I'd never put that together, but that's so good.
Yeah, I certainly hadn't. I wasn't even looking at that level of detail. You just kind of, I was kind of taking in the gestalt of it. But yeah, speaking of the homeless people, I mean, you don't even see any like non-homeless people on the streets. Like, everyone on the streets is either a cop or a homeless person. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Totally. Oh man. And speaking of like machines used to destroy things, like, it's the car that begins the fight in the police station, right? He rams the car through the door and kills that first cop. It's just like the machines and the destruction of machines are everywhere in this whole thing. And of course, it's very fitting that the third act takes place in a factory where machines are, I don't know what they're doing. I read that like in Cameron's original version of the script, that was supposed to be a Cyberdyne owned factory, and that's how they find the arm, but they don't actually say that in this movie, because in an earlier draft of the script, like, they bring up Cyberdyne, and Sarah Connor says to Kyle, like, well, we have to stop Cyberdyne, we have to prevent this, and Kyle Reese's response is basically like, we're not here to prevent the future, we're here to preserve it. And that ended up being cut out of the movie, which, I mean, I don't think that's needed in the movie, so I kind of like that was cut out and saved for a future movie.
Yeah. Right. It's way more of a complicated and philosophical idea, which you can fully explore in the sequel once you have already nailed down the basic premise thoroughly.
Yeah, totally.
That does seem like a good thing to do with the sequel, where you're like, okay, this is kind of what I wanted to do with the first movie, but I realized that it was too much. So that's what the sequel is going to be, actually. And that makes sense. That feels right to me.
It totally feels right. As we're kind of wrapping up here, one of the things I'd be remiss in not mentioning is the criminal psychologist Silberman, who will make an appearance in T2
and T3 and T4.
Yeah, he just keeps showing up. I love this character. I love him so much, and I think like this is the perfect example. Like, every one of the characters in that police station is, if I want to give an example of what characterization is to James Cameron and the importance of characterization to James Cameron, I can just point to this police station, because none of these guys, we don't need any of that. Like, the two police officers die, kind of unheroically. They just get blown away by the Terminator. In fact, Lance Henriksen's death we don't actually even see. We see the Chief get hit, and then we see Lance Henriksen turn around the corner and fire on the Terminator, and we see the Terminator turn around and fire back, and then it cuts, and we cut to Linda Hamilton under the desk, and we just hear him die, which is just like we spend a lot of time with these characters. It just feels so, unimportant and meaningless, and I love it. But back to my point, the criminal psychologist guy, like, how do you characterize this man in 15 seconds, which is all the time you have for in the script? Here's how you do it. He shows up there, he says hi to Sarah Connor, and she says, "Are you a doctor?" And he goes, "Criminal psychologist." And that's it. You've done it. You know exactly who this guy is now. That, like, he is a guy who is here to try to figure out if Kyle Reese is crazy, but he's tired and he doesn't really give a shit. He doesn't care. He's already made his decision before you even talk to him. And it's perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah. And he's wearing like a sweater vest. I mean, I think once again, all the costuming for everyone is perfect. I don't know how much James Cameron has to do with that, but I mean, stuff like the tire tread on the face really makes me think that he is down in those details, and everything I know about him suggests that he would be down into those details too. Yeah,
I mean, he is definitely the type of director, as we talked about last week, that just wants to be in every meeting. And like, yes, he does have an entire wardrobe department. He has an entire set decoration department. There are people in charge of those things, but at the end of the day, like, they work for Jim Cameron, and he is going to decide what is and isn't in the movie.
Right.
And he is, and some directors will be more involved in that than others, and he's definitely one of the ones that is.
Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff that you can track between movies, like the way that the music in the nightclub fades into or crossfades with, rather, the kind of more industrial horror Terminator theme as the Terminator finds Sarah in the nightclub. He loves to do that sort of like fading of the sound to emphasize a change in tone.
Yeah.
And that's a James Cameron thing, and it's like, well, that's a sound thing. Wouldn't that be the purview of the sound designer? It's like, yeah, well, yeah, sure.
Yeah, technically, yes,
but he I think he does micromanage these things.
Yeah, I guess we could talk about the music briefly, which is just incredible. Like, the Terminator theme is iconic. It's so good, but the rest of this music is very like 80s, techno pop. But I think that works for the movie. I really think it does. Like, it's very synth heavy, and I think it just works for what they're doing with the movie. I think it dates it, certainly. Like, I think when you watch this movie with someone who hasn't seen it before, and like one of the chase scenes starts and it's like it's just like people are just like, wow, this feels older, but it works. I think it firmly puts the movie in the time it existed in.
Yeah, I mean, like, the rear projection screen Terminator chasing them down the hallway is, never going to look real. But speaking of things that date the movie, but like,
sure,
the pacing and the characters and everything is so solid that you're just like, I really, really don't care about these things.
Yeah, like, the special effects haven't aged well. Like, you can, they're like, it's very obvious when you're cutting between Arnold Schwarzenegger in Terminator makeup and the animatronic Arnold face that they made. Like, that is very obvious, but like, I almost don't care, because A, that animatronic is actually still impressive.
Yeah.
And like, B, I can tell when something's CG. Like, does being able to tell when something is a special effect mean the special effect is bad? I don't think so. Because every time I see CGI in a movie, I can be like, okay, that's CGI.
No.
Like,
and more importantly to me is it's still a super effective scene, right?
Yeah.
Like I was like shifting in my seat, like, and but when he's just calmly cutting out his own eyeball with a scalpel, and regardless of the fact that we're cutting back and forth between, there's something just so like viscerally like disgusting about when he just like presses the white towel into his eye socket. And like, that there's just like a hole there now, and it just comes away like soaked in red, and it's like, yeah, you didn't really see it, but that makes it much grosser, actually.
Yeah, I also really like the detail of like fixing the joint in his arm that allows his fingers to move, like, and you can see like the metal move back and forth. Like I just
Mhm.
love that. Like the metal tendons, I guess you could call them, move
Mhm.
back and forth. I don't know. There's something very visceral and real about it. And yes, it doesn't look 100% real, but it feels textual in a way that works for me.
Yeah, it's great.
Anything else you wanted to say about James Cameron's The Terminator?
I mean, probably, but I think that this is a good. I did notice that James Cameron, in every movie, in literally every movie of his, you can only kill the monster by pushing a button.
Huh. Yeah.
Think about it. Even True Lies, Scott.
Huh. Huh. No, you're totally right. Wow. This is changing everything.
Yeah.
It's not really, but no, you're 100% right.
I mean, I'm sure that there's some exceptions, but anyway,
that's really good. That's really good.
It's I don't even know what to make of it, but it's funny. I mean, in this movie, what you make of it is she uses a machine to kill Terminator,
to kill a machine,
which is ironic. Yeah.
Okay. One final question, actually, and maybe it's a little bit premature of a question, but is this peak Michael Biehn?
So as far as I'm concerned, that question actually just means is he better here than he is in Aliens? And I think probably is the answer.
He's been in other things.
He has been in other things, but I they're not things that I care about that much. So.
Remember when he was in The Rock?
Oh yeah, he was pretty good in The Rock. Actually, I liked him in The Rock.
He's a bit character.
I mean, this is his iconic role, though.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, he was also in Tombstone, by the way. The thing is, in Aliens, he is one of many characters and arguably one of the most important Marines, sure. But in this movie, he's Kyle Reese.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's not the main character, but he's as close to the main characters you can get without being the main character. And I just feel like this movie offers him much more to do than Aliens does. Like, I love Corporal Hicks. You know I love Corporal Hicks. But like, who is Hicks as a person?
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of characters in Aliens, and he just doesn't get a lot of room to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
He is a main character of this movie.
Yeah, he's also in The Abyss, by the way.
Oh my God, yes. Oh, that might be my favorite character of his, actually.
Ooh, yeah. It's too early to make this conclusion.
I can't commit to that. Yeah.
Let's introduce the question so we can figure out as we go.
Because I really like him as a villain in The Abyss. So
I really like. Let's ask this question about every single one of these characters.
Okay.
Because he reuses the same actor so many times. Like, we can ask the question: is this peak Linda Hamilton? Is this peak Arnold Schwarzenegger? No, absolutely not. It's not peak Arnold Schwarzenegger. Is this peak Linda Hamilton, Matt? I
don't think I can say. I don't think I can say that because T2 is T2.
I feel like the world would riot if we said that T2 was not peak Linda Hamilton.
No,
but I'm going to say that actually Dante's peak is peak Linda Hamilton.
Yeah, sure, Scott. Okay.
Remember Dante's peak?
I think I sort of do, but the funny thing is I just have it completely mixed up with whatever the other volcano movie was. Yeah. That came out around then.
Remember the 90s when they were just doing that, where two movies about the same thing from different studios would come out within months of each other?
I do. That's so weird. I still don't understand why they would do that.
I don't know.
I think
I just like Dante's Peak was not a great movie. Volcano is the Tommy Lee Jones one, and that is a terrible movie.
I think they're both bad.
Volcano is the one where there's a volcano in LA, and I just remember the ad campaign being like, there are 1,300 and whatever volcanoes that we know about, and one that we don't. And then they stop lava with like highway dividers, and then suddenly at the end of Volcano, they tried to make it like a racial equality thing, where like, which one's your dad? And he's like, the kid's like, I don't know. They all look the same because everyone's covered in ash, so you can't tell the color of people's skin. And I'm just like, what are you doing, movie?
Yeah.
God, the 90s. Jesus.
It's taking all of the things we said didn't work in Piranha 2: The Spawning and making them even worse by having the monster be extremely slow moving lava.
Who directed Volcano?
I don't know.
I need to look
I
that
thought
up.
it was called Volcano LA, which is a very 90s movie title.
No, see, what the advertisement did is it took the L and the A in Volcano and then like made them different colors. So you saw the L and the A.
I think peak Michael Biehn is The Mandalorian, actually. I forgot he was in that until I started Googling just now.
Mick Jackson directed Volcano. Also directed The Bodyguard.
Okay. Well, good for him.
So that's enough of a tangent for us. But
yes, it is.
Let's remember these questions about peak actors because it's going to be fun to do this as we go through these movies.
All right.
Doof. All right, Matt. It's time. It's time for me to have my existential crisis.
Do it.
So you ready for this? I don't know if you can handle this.
Okay.
So it was my birthday this past weekend, and on Saturday, I went to the movies because it was my birthday, and I said I want to go to the movies. And so, my wife's mother came over to watch our son, and we went to the movies for the first time in a while. And I'm sitting there trying to decide what movie I want to see. What I have very limited time to go to the theater now with, a combination of this pandemic and also, having an infant makes it very difficult to go to the theater, as I'm sure you know.
Indeed.
And so I'm sitting there saying, what do I want to go see? Well, I haven't seen Shang-Chi before. And I was looking at Shang-Chi, a movie I definitely want to see and definitely will see. And I said to myself, the phrase, I kind of just want to go see like an adult movie for adults.
Sure.
So I went and saw a movie called The Card Counter, which is a movie you probably never heard of.
Nope.
It's a Paul Schrader movie, who's a director you maybe have never heard of. Paul Schrader has done a lot of movies. I mean, he wrote Taxi. Is it Taxi Driver? Yes, the Scorsese one.
Yeah, Taxi Driver.
Taxi Driver. Yes, he wrote Taxi Driver. He wrote Raging Bull. He worked very closely with Martin Scorsese in that part of his career. More recently, he directed a movie called First Reformed in 2017 that did very well. And this is a new movie. And Paul Schrader writes movies and directs movies about, loner men who are going through shit. And this movie is about a character played by Oscar Isaac who counts cards and like basically travels the casinos on the Eastern Seaboard, like winning like $800 at a time from blackjack tables around casinos. Not enough to where you get the shit kicked out of you, just enough to you can survive and then move on to a different casino. So it's this very kind of slow burn character study type movie, like the exact opposite of the type of movie you think you'd want to go to a movie theater for. But I wanted to do that, and I'm so glad I did. And this is what I'm dealing with now, Matt. I have such limited time to go to the theater, and what I knew about myself is that if I wait till this movie comes out on stream and I watch it in my house, I'm gonna have my phone in front of my face the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a slow enough movie where it's just very easy to pick up your phone and just stop being absorbed in the movie. And so I was like, no, I want to sit down in the theater and I want to watch an adult movie. And I loved it. I mean, the movie is not perfect. I have things about the movie I didn't like, but I loved doing this. And what does that mean? What does it mean, Matt? What does it mean?
I mean, there's always going to be another Marvel movie. So you can't and you can watch them anytime. You can watch it at home. It's still going to be there. But I do think that there's something special about the theater going experience when you're watching a slow grown-up movie.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way in hell I would have paid as much attention and been as absorbed by this movie had I watched it at home.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly, the movies that I have seen in theaters recently, and by recently, I mean over the last several years, my oldest child is almost 10 years old. That is how much of my life has been on a reduced film going diet. And most of the movies I go see are movies that I can go see with kids, and it's a very different experience. than going to see a drama, and that's a worthwhile thing to do. And so I do think that you should, take advantage of that and savor it when you're able to.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because I'm like remembering movies that I've seen that kind of remind me of what you just talked about, and I'm like, yeah, that was like 16 years ago. Yeah, it's like my most recent memory of having that experience.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, this is why I treasure the theatrical experience so much, because I just don't think there's a way to reproduce this. You can get the biggest TV in your house possible, the biggest sound system, the most crisp looking picture and sound and everything, and you still will not be able to replicate the experience of leaving your house, going to a big dark room and sitting there and watching something and being totally absorbed in something in this kind of way. And I love the spectacle movies. I love these movies. I'm going to see Shang-Chi and I'm going to love it. But yeah, I want this experience and I want to be able to do that. And like, if I'm in a place now where, like before the pandemic and before I had a kid, we were at the theater once a week, sometimes more than once a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to make less important choices about the things I was seeing. I would see all the new stuff. It's like, oh, there's new movies this week. I'll see them all. I can't do that anymore. And so I have to make the choices. And I guess it's not that I was surprised by my choice, but I was just like, I made the choice and I stepped back and said, I'm growing up.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, a movie, I think movies are special, like I'm going through my head and realizing I'm thinking of movies and being like, did I see that in the theater originally? Yes. If yes, do I remember seeing it in the theater? What theater did I see it in? And I can always answer. And this is amazing. I didn't realize this. I'm like, I know where oh yeah, that one theater in California. Oh yeah, that one weird hole in the wall theater in Houston that I saw that one movie in that one time. It's part of the experience and it really is special. And I think I've forgotten that. I think or at least I've not consciously thought about it in a long time. And I'm getting to kind of re-experience this a little bit now that my kids are old enough to take to movies, because that's its own joy, is going to see movies with your kids. But
sure.
But it's I don't know. I appreciate that. I think you'll be okay, Scott.
Okay. Well, thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. In conclusion, Marvel movies are bad, right? That's what some people are going to hear, is that I'm just shitting on Shang-Chi or whatever.
Because it's not for grown-ups. I mean, look, I mean, you can just, like, definitionally, it is a movie that is supposed to appeal to all quadrants. It appealed very much to my young children. It appealed to me as well. We all enjoyed it. But there are things about it that make it not a movie for grown-ups. I know what you mean by that. Yes.
Yeah, totally. I'm going to see it and I'm going to love it. Like, I know that's going to happen. Yeah. But I just wanted to see this little tiny Oscar Isaac card counting movie first.
Sure.
Which it's very sad. It's a very sad movie. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I don't even want to tell you about it because it's just going to make you sad.
Yeah, I don't want to hear about it.
All right. You want to talk about some TV real quick?
Yeah.
Because this weird thing happened where you decided that you were the type of person that watches TV, which has been, a frustration of mine ever since I've known you. I want to talk to you every week about all the TV I'm watching, but you don't really watch any TV, so I can never do that. Mm-hmm. And now you just decided that you're a TV guy.
No, not
and by
really.
that I mean you've watched like 6 episodes of 2 different shows,
yes.
I think, which is a lot for you.
It's a lot for me. And I can tell you exactly what happened. What happened is I've been very overly busy for the last 3 or 4 weeks between work and side projects and our company, and just like had like no time to myself. And I was repeatedly in this situation where I would be like, all right, I've got a free minute. I can work on this project now. Okay, I've got a 2-hour chunk here. Okay, I can do the script for Kingslingers. And I got to a point after like 3 weeks of that where I was like, I need to fucking set time aside and just be, and just like literally just rest. And so I was like, okay, Matt, what does that look like? And I was like, well, I could just do what other people do and just put on Netflix and see what's on Netflix. And so one was, okay, so should I say the shows that I was watching? And
yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So the first show, so actually the first show we watched the first 2 episodes of Invincible together for our Doof and Chill the other day, a few weeks ago. And I had seen the first episode. The second episode really got me completely hooked, and then I proceeded to just binge the whole rest of the show in like a night or two, I guess.
Yeah. Like I remember we left that streaming session going, oh, maybe we'll come back and stream the rest of the episodes. And then like 2 days later, you were like, oops, I finished Invincible.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
much for that.
Yeah. Sorry about that. But it was for my sanity. And then after I finished that, I still kind of had these periods of time where I was like, I need to take a break here. And I did the thing, Scott. I went on Netflix and I was aimlessly meandering around Netflix.
Did you let the algorithm pick your thing for you?
Well, so it's funny because the first thing it suggested was Squid Game.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't watch that immediately, but I eventually came back around to it. And Michael had said that he liked it, which was at that point enough for me to give it a chance. And then I watched like 3 episodes of Squid Game, and I really enjoyed Squid Game. I don't want to spoil much or anything about it, but it's one of those things where it's sort of a phenomenon right now, and I think it deserves it. Have you seen that one?
I am on episode 5 of Squid Game. So yeah, I mean, I think it is like the most interesting thing to talk about Squid Game without spoiling anything is just the fact that we can still have these things in our culture that is so segmented into different streaming services and hundreds of thousands of different TV shows. There can still be a thing like Squid Game, which just in the course of basically a weekend just completely takes over cultural consciousness. Yeah. Like Squid Game, I don't know where it came from, but it just took over. Like I had never heard of it. And then all weekend, I'm just hearing people talk about Squid Game constantly. And so finally I just went, fine, I'll fucking watch Squid Game. So I did. And I enjoyed it. And I think there's some worthwhile conversations to have about what I think it's doing very well. And some of the stuff I don't think it's doing quite as well. But I think it shows the power of Netflix still. Like Netflix in this world of 75 different streaming services with hundreds of different things on each of them and the ability to get completely lost in the depth of content, something like this can still happen. And that's just like Netflix is still reigning supreme because on some level they must have orchestrated this, right? Like the reason Squid Game was on your thing is because they pushed it hard. And so they pushed it hard and then they used the power of word of mouth to make it. I mean, I think it's number one on their stupid list thing. It's number one right now. Yeah.
That was maybe the main reason I watched it, other than Michael's recommendation, is it was just like big, giant Squid Game. First thing I saw when I logged in. Mm-hmm. And it looks like, I think a big part of it is that it's just such an intriguing pitch. Like you, even the little autoplay thing, by far the most interesting looking thing on Netflix.
Yeah. Should we say it like, I don't want to spoil it, but like Squid Game is a Korean 10 episode, 12 episode, 9 episode show. Gosh, how do I describe this without spoiling it? I think some of the fun is what the concept actually is.
Yeah. Let's not.
Well, yeah, let's just not.
Because I agree. Like what do you say? But it's funny to me because I was realizing watching it, like, man, like every Korean TV show or movie that I've ever seen has been great, and I don't know. I'm very kind of impressed by the stuff they're putting out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably like, I agree. Like I've quite enjoyed a lot of Korean cinema, but I think it's probably like, the stuff that gets to you is probably the cream of the crop. So
yeah, I think you're right. I guess I kind of like the sensibility behind it though, in any case, and the themes and
and the filmmaking. It's like this is like for a spectacularly shot show. I love it. I love the tone of it. I love the writing,
the acting. The lead actor, I think, is a big part of the appeal. Actually,
he's incredible. He's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
You should watch more of it. I think you will enjoy episode 4 a lot.
Okay.
Squid Game is a fun show. So
yeah, I don't remember if I actually like concluded on Invincible, but I really ended up enjoying the entirety of Invincible. I think 45 minutes is the perfect length of time for a piece of television. And
yeah, I agree.
And that's just an eminently bingeable, enjoyable show that really won me over and held me the whole time.
Yeah. I'm going to use this opportunity to plug a few shows that I've been watching. The first of which I already talked about on Kingslingers this week, but it is Mike Flanagan's Midnight Mass, also a Netflix show that is also very popular and doing very well, but had the unfortunate thing of coming out the same weekend as the Squid Game phenomenon. So it is still number 2 in the US on Netflix. So it's doing well, and I'm glad. It is it's so good. Like, I talked about this on Kingslingers because Mike Flanagan is a writer director who just gets Stephen King and understands what a Stephen King-esque story is and what he's crafted in the show. And I've only seen the first 3 episodes of it, but what he's crafted in the show is just incredibly watchable and incredible. Like, the episodes are 60 minutes long, so it's a little bit, or actually more. I'm looking at episode 4 right now, which is 70 minutes long. So it's a little bit more of a time commitment than something like Squid Game, but and it is definitely one of those Netflix shows that is just kind of a long movie, that the episodes really aren't distinct amongst themselves, which is not my favorite thing, but it's such a powerful show, and it deals with the exact kind of themes that I love, like the struggle of faith and of guilt and trauma and just like all these themes that Flanagan really loves exploring. It's just really, really, really good. Midnight Mass. I wholeheartedly recommend it.
Okay. Yeah, I want to watch that. If I continue to be completely overwhelmed in my life and require hard, intense rest, then I will definitely check that out.
Yeah, and this is when I also give the opportunity to recommend the other Mike Flanagan Netflix shows, which are The Haunting of Hill House and The Haunting of Bly Manor, which are 2 incredible television shows that Mike Flanagan has made. I think I liked Hill House a little bit better than Bly Manor, but they're both really good. Really, Mike Flanagan, man, he's the best. Like, if there's anyone in the world that should be doing a Dark Tower adaptation, I think it's him. That's how much I like what he's doing and how much I think he gets the Stephen King-iness of storytelling. Sure.
Yeah, I still want to watch Haunting the Hill House, actually. So
I hope that's not too spooky for you. It's pretty scary. It's pretty scary.
Yeah,
you can do it though. I have faith in you.
I don't know. I'm a big boy now,
What else did I want to talk about? Oh, there's a show on Hulu called Reservation Dogs. I think that's my favorite show of the year, actually. It's about 4 Native American kids living in Oklahoma City, living on a reservation in Oklahoma City. And I don't want to over explain this show because it's just kind of about like the kind of opening thing of the show is that these 4 kids are trying to save money so they can leave the reservation and move to California. And you learn that one of the reasons is because one of their best friends passed away last year, and they're depressed and missing him and hoping that getting out of the reservation, leaving town, will help them find themselves. And it's just one of those, like, I don't know if you ever watched the show Atlanta. It's similar to that, and it's just like a show that we introduce these characters and we introduce these world, and then we just kind of hang out in them and do really interesting things. If you're talking about shows that have distinct episodes, this is the show where there's just be an episode, and this is an episode about this character, and we're just going to focus on this guy, this side character that we haven't really spent a lot of time with. It's just going to have a whole episode on him. It's so sharply written. It's so funny. I think Taika Waititi helped write the pilot, but I think the showrunner is Sterling Harjo. He has taken over the rest of it, and I can't recommend this enough. It's on Hulu. There's only like 8 episodes. They're 30 minutes each, really low time commitment, and one of the best shows I've watched all year.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds really interesting. There's a lot about that sounds interesting. So
yeah. I mean, I think it's the type of show where if you give it a shot, like, you'll like it. Like, I just can't imagine the type of person who would watch the show and just be like, nah. It's just it's so clever and so fucking funny. It's so funny, man. And I was listening to an interview with the creator, and he's basically saying, like, yeah, like native humor is really different, and like we've, living in the places we're living and going through the things we've gone through, like we've had to develop a very distinct and unique sense of humor. And the big thing I wanted to do in this show was capture that sense of humor. And I'm like, I mean, I don't know anything about, like, I'm not Native American. I've not lived on a reservation, but the humor does feel like, to me, new and different and exciting and hilarious. And so, like, I'm just totally in on the show. It got picked up for a second season, and I'm very happy for it.
Awesome. That's cool. Yeah. Well, yeah. Unfortunately, you've given me too many things.
I'm sorry.
But they all sound very cool.
Yeah, I could give you more, but I think I'm going to stop there because
Okay.
those are my two favorite shows on TV right now: Midnight Mass on Netflix and Reservation Dogs on Hulu. And of course, there's Squid Game, which I think, we were talking with our partner, Alexandra. I think we're probably going to end up doing an episode on Squid Game eventually. I don't know when we're going to squeeze that in, but
Yeah.
it feels like the type of show that we'd all have a lot to say on.
Yeah. I mean, I'll have to fit in actually watching it, but yeah, for sure.
You'll get there, man.
Okay.
It's only nine episodes. You only have 6 episodes to go.
Only 6 more hours.
No, 6 more.
At this rate, that'll take 6 weeks.
Oh wait, actually, hold on. Ooh. Yeah, there are. Huh. The weird thing about Netflix now is that there's no set time for episodes anymore.
Uh-huh.
Like, they just do whatever they want.
They're just
like,
whatever. Yeah.
I'm looking at the list of these episodes, and episode 5 is 51 minutes. Episode 6 is 61 minutes. Episode 8 is 32 minutes.
Wow.
Just like, whatever. We just whatever.
That's weird. That's so interesting. Wonder why.
Well, it's just like they don't, like, there's no one there to tell them cut your episode down to this time limit anymore. Like back in the days of TV with commercials, it's like your episode has to be 42 minutes long. 42 minutes and like 10 seconds is the most leeway we can give you, and that's just gone now.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think that's good. Like, I want a show to only last as long as the episode should last. So
yes. The flip side of that is sometimes the shows last longer than the episode should last.
That's true.
But maybe we'll get into that some other time.
I know what you're saying.
But that is all we had for you folks this week. If you have any opinions on the Terminator, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, on my existential crisis with movie theaters. Actually, if you're mad at me about what I said about adult movies, you can actually send that email to matt@doofmedia.com.
Yeah.
It'll get to me, I promise.
Yeah. And I don't even check that email address, honestly.
Oh, well.
In complete honesty, I've never looked at it. So if you sent me something there, by the way, maybe try something else.
In all seriousness, you can reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or on Twitter @doofmedia. You can also find us on our Reddit, that's r/doofmedia, and on Instagram @doofmedia. And actually, we want to hear from you folks. What TV shows are you watching right now? Are you watching any of the shows that we talked about? Are you watching some different shows? But what shows are you watching and enjoying right now? Let us know.
Yeah, what's good in the universe of TV? If you're not already subscribed to this podcast, we encourage you to do so and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
And if you like what we do here and want to support us, consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. You can head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia and pledge at any of the available levels. You get a bunch of cool bonus prizes like voting in book clubs and game clubs and fan art contests and all that good stuff. Bonus episodes of podcasts, ability to pick shows for us to do episodes of this show on. All kinds of really cool stuff. That's right over there at patreon.com/doofmedia.
Yeah. Also, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, because every review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
That is right. All right. We are finally finished. We will see you all next week as we continue our James Cameron series with his next film, which it's a big one, Matt. I'm a little nervous about this because next week we're going to be talking about James Cameron's Aliens.
Awesome.
Oh boy. We'll see you next week.
My name is Doof. Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.